It's very difficult to live in an empty house that we shared and we did everything together.
A life dedicated to her son Garth.
And I walked by his bedroom with his Elmos, knowing that that's where he should be and that's what he loves and that's what he wants.
Changed in an instant.
I called the hospital. Garth was discharged without any of family knowing that.
Taken from his family and friends.
Who can tell us where Garth Schutte is?
And placed under a conservatorship, restricting his family from seeing him.
Because the choice has been taken away from him by this temporary conservatorship.
A conservatorship enforced by your tax dollars.
There's very little transparency here.
And the voice that's missing, Garth's.
Garth hasn't been allowed to speak in court much at all.
I think that Garth isn't being heard.
We wanted to hear directly from him and ask what he wants.
Do you wish you lived with your family, Garth?
Yes. I truly miss my mom.
This is the price of care.
Garth is a fun character. So he likes the kinds of things that 5-year-olds like. He likes Pixar and Disney movies. He likes his stuffed animals, especially when they talk.
Garth is the baby brother of the Schutte clan, the youngest of 3 boys, all raised by Jill.
Mom has always been an incredible provider for us. As a single mom, that's quite a challenge.
We were always very supported.
But at 7 months old, Jill found that Garth required different support than his brothers.
They usually start talking back and respond to sounds they're hearing, so they at first thought he was deaf.
But further testing found Garth has a developmental disability. He was later diagnosed with autism and obsessive-compulsive disorder, a diagnosis he and his family have navigated together for the last 4 decades.
He is 40 years old, very proud to be a 40-year-old, but mentally he sees through the eyes of a 5-year-old.
Initially, Jill says doctors believe Garth would be mute and immobile, but that didn't stop Jill.
I got a waterbed crib to help his vestibular system. I was getting a lot of information and studying at the library.
She became dedicated to learning everything about her son's special needs, and thanks to her hard work, Garth ended up defying doctors' initial expectations.
Actually, his doctor said he would never walk and he'd never talk, but he sure does talk, and he sure walks.
Seeing Garth's growth fueled Jill to learn even more about disabilities. She spent years getting her bachelor's and then multiple master's degrees from Sacramento State. It led to a career with the California Department of Rehabilitation.
I have worked for years in the disability field for the state of California. The 3 of us work for the state of California.
But who Jill, Russell, and Ian say they learned from the most was Garth himself.
He taught me so much about humility and about accepting differences, and Garth was always someone who contributed to my happiness. I think he's my best friend.
They remember home as a place full of love.
My mom had each of us playing instruments.
And support.
And it was just a magical experience.
And when Garth was around, a little more noise and a little more joy from his childlike outlook on the world. But today, Jill's home is quiet. Empty, because Garth is gone. So where is Garth today? His family doesn't know. They think he's 30 miles away in a care home in Shingle Springs, but they can't be certain. They're not allowed to know Garth's address or his phone number.
The fact that he's not allowed to spend time with his family it's just a crime.
All because he's been conserved.
A conservatorship is a legal tool approved through the probate court that takes away someone's rights who's unable to care for themselves and gives them to another person.
But Garth hasn't been conserved by just anyone. He's been conserved by a multi-billion-dollar state agency, the Department of Developmental Services. Known as DDS, the Department of Developmental Services is funded by taxpayer money and responsible for ensuring equal rights for all Californians with disabilities. DDS oversees and funds regional centers throughout the state where people with disabilities and their families can receive a number of services and support. And that's why Jill went to her regional center to get a caretaker to help watch Garth at times.
About 15 years ago, When I was at work, the person that was brought to the home that was funded by the regional center was ordered to take Garth 2 miles south of here and have him locked up in a facility for people that had untreatable schizophrenia.
Garth doesn't have schizophrenia, according to medical records and court reports.
His Kaiser doctor provided a letter that said he doesn't have schizophrenia. He's never had schizophrenia.
While alarmed, Jill also assumed it was a mistake and could quickly get Garth back.
It took a lawyer and 9 months to get him returned to the home.
The DDS Regional Center that Jill turned to for help said in court documents that Jill could not maintain Garth safely in her home and no other residential options existed, and Garth himself consented to be taken away. Later, a court investigator said the regional center took Garth in a deceptive manner and that the family had no way to contact him. When Jill got Garth back, she decided she was done with the regional center.
One of the agreements at that time was that the case from Regional Center, which is supposed to be voluntary, we were able to get it closed.
It was closed around 15 years, but then Garth's psychiatrist of 10 years retired. In early 2020, Garth met with a new doctor.
One of the first things that doctor said is, does he have a case open with Regional Center? And we said no, and there's been some trauma around that, so we'd like to not open it again.
Court documents say the appointment with the new psychiatrist was just 20 minutes long, where he made changes to Garth's medication and encouraged Jill to reopen his regional center case.
He was very, very almost forceful. It took me a few months to decide, but I thought that might be the best so that I show that I'm a cooperative parent.
So in 2020, Jill decided to reopen Garth's case with Alta Regional Center.
Another day with dangerous heat, among the hottest ever recorded.
After that case was open, in August it was very hot, so Garth went to the doctor because he was not eating quite as much or drinking quite as much.
For his entire life, Jill has had to assist Garth with everyday things, including showering, shaving.
I usually catheterized him once a day.
And even using a catheter.
He was catheterized in the home, and I was trained by 3 different medical staff, and Kaiser was providing his medicine. Of course, you can't buy catheters. They're prescription only.
Okay. So
And-
this is all from the hospital, is that right?
That's correct.
At the hospital, Jill says Garth tried to explain to staff how he needed to be catheterized.
Garth says things differently, and he mentioned to one of the nurses, my mom puts a red plastic straw in my private part.
Hospital staff are mandatory reporters. They have to report any sign of potential abuse.
I respect mandated reporters. That's their job.
Jill says an alert of suspected abuse went to Adult Protective Services, as well as Alta Regional Center.
But when we look at the California state law regarding mandated reporters, the reporters only report suspicions. It's the sheriffs and the police that do the investigation. It's Adult Protective Services who expand the investigation, not Regional Center.
Neither the Regional Center nor Adult Protective Services would comment when we asked about the hospital's report. Jill says no investigators contacted her about what Garth said about his catheter. She never got to take him home from the hospital because for the second time in 15 years, the state took him away.
The way I was notified is I got a notice on my phone through Kaiser that said, you can pick up your medicine at the discharge pharmacy. I thought, that's odd. I called the hospital. Garth was discharged without any of family knowing that. He was discharged and sent to a care home.
You're his mother. How did that happen?
I don't know. I don't know. I don't know that that was legal.
Because at that point he wasn't under a conservatorship, is that
He
correct?
was not. That is correct. He was my son. And I had Kaiser's model of power of attorney.
For the next 3 months, their family was not told where Garth was.
We had absolutely no idea. They would not even say, is he in Sacramento? We did not know.
They called the sheriff's office and Sacramento County, searching frantically.
Who can tell us where Garth Schutte is? Shouldn't the public guardian know where he is? If anybody has taken custody, they are supposed to notify the public guardian. But the public guardian is telling us we don't know where Garth is.
They even filed a missing persons report.
We tried to contact Regional Center many times. We were told that Garth was saying that he didn't want to have visitors. Now that seems very odd for a young man that has lived in one home for almost 40 years.
With no other options, the Schutte family decided to try to get conservatorship over Garth, a step they'd never taken for 40 years to maintain his independence.
And it was 16 pages of all of the attempts that this family made to sheriff's offices, to adult protective services, to missing persons, to regional center, to everywhere, to try and find out where Garth Schutte was.
But as they were preparing their case,
one Saturday I was just vacuuming our floors in the living room and two medical technicians were knocking on my door.
with them was Garth.
I was shocked. I was thrilled. We immediately called his two brothers.
You hadn't even known where he was for how many months before?
3 months.
How was it for you to see him?
It's beyond words.
But within 24 hours, another knock on the door.
And it ended up being 3 sheriffs, Sacramento County sheriffs. And they were very angry at us, and they said, you act like abusers.
You have some objection to that.
Abuse in the house.
The regional center called, and I believe Adult Protective Services did, and said that he's here and they needed a wellness check. I said, please come in.
Ian shared the video he recorded of all 47 minutes the deputies were there. The deputies took Garth outside and spoke with him alone.
Can we chat just for 2 seconds outside?
You can hear them ask Garth where he wants to live.
I don't want to go here. Yeah.
Well, how about here at this home? Do you like staying here?
I really do like to stay here.
A sentiment repeated throughout the sheriff's time there.
I stay here and I don't want to go here. No, I'm not here.
Where do you want to go, buddy?
I'm on the what's my home?
Okay.
The deputies also explained he was brought back to his home by mistake.
He was placed into your care last night due to a clerical error. And so what makes the most sense to us is we undo that clerical error. He goes back to the home that he was in.
But after hearing from Garth directly and doing an inspection of the home,
Do you mind if I just do a quick...
the deputies' concerns of abuse appeared to vanish.
Yeah, looks like you guys definitely have a great home for him.
They came to take Garth, but decided not to.
I completely believe you.
We see that he's healthy, happy, and safe here.
We're glad he's got such a good home here.
The deputies told Adult Protective Services and the regional center their experience.
We're going to talk to APS, let them know.
Before the deputies left, they advised the Schuttes get conservatorship as quickly as possible.
That'll prevent them from pulling all this.
The Schutte family took that to heart, but while they worked on getting conservatorship, they found Garth was different than before. They said his medications were changed during his time away. Jill said it made him unstable. They felt it was more of a reason to get conservatorship so they could have control over his medical decisions. Limited conservatorships for those with disabilities are called limited because rather than stripping someone of all their civil rights, they have 7 powers that can be taken and given to the conservator depending on the conservatee's needs. Making medical decisions for someone is one of the powers. For Garth's conservatorship, Jill and Russell requested to be conservators and filed a petition asking for 5 out of 7 powers. By law, the court appoints an attorney for the potential conserved person to advocate for what that person wants. The court appointed Dewey Harpainter to represent Garth. His office is in Auburn, about an hour drive from Sacramento.
I called him several times. Then at one point I said, you know, we're an hour-away drive. If you would like, I can drive Garth up. I will sit in the car so that you can have private questioning with Garth. He denied that at least 5 times.
Why?
There was no answer.
The Schutte family's attorney brought this up in court.
We requested another court-appointed attorney, and the judge said no.
So to this day, Garth's court-appointed attorney has never actually met Garth?
That is correct, and it hasn't been changed.
Garth's court-appointed attorney's initial report to the court says he spoke with Jill on the phone a couple of times and scheduled a Zoom meeting that Jill says never occurred.
If you don't have a link, there's no way to answer a Zoom.
Jill said his office sent the link to the wrong email address. Following our interview with the Schutte family, we emailed and called Garth's attorney repeatedly asking for an interview. We never heard back. Court records show he did eventually meet in person with Garth after we began investigating this case. The meeting took place just 6 days after we first reached out for an interview. When a conservatorship is requested, courts also appoint an investigator.
The court investigator called me and we answered and talked over many things.
The court investigator has a lot of influence. They interview the conservatee, assess the family dynamic, and write a report for the judge.
While this report is confidential, really only for the judge's eyes, we were able to obtain a copy of the investigator's report done for Garth in April of 2021.
The investigator spoke with Garth one-on-one in a private phone call. In his report, he wrote that Garth expressed a very strong desire to remain at home, telling the investigator, "I don't want to go to a group home. I would like to live at home." Criminal background checks were done on Jill and Russell, who were petitioning for shared conservatorship custody. The investigator's report also went through Adult Protective Services records and past abuse referrals, which were all deemed inconclusive. That means they didn't have evidence to confirm or deny that Garth was abused, the agency told us. The court investigator recommended to the judge that the Schutte's petition to conserve Garth be granted.
The court investigator determined that there should be no question that this home is a great home for Garth.
But the regional center told the judge a different story. It claimed a number of allegations of abuse by the family from medical professionals in their written assessment of Garth. We read them to Jill to get her side. She said before the conservatorship, she and Garth had years of experience with doctors, Special Olympics staff, and other mandated reporters.
At no time did any doctor or any professional advised me that anything that was being done was abusive.
Another allegation in the report is that she locked Garth in a windowless room.
We had locks on the doors, on his bedroom door, and I locked him in when he was dangerous to himself or running away.
She said Garth would try to break through the window in his room so he could pick up trash outside, a habit from his OCD.
I mentioned that to the doctor, and he said, you know, could you put a plywood or something across the window, depending on the size of the window? And I said, I can do that.
She said she spoke with the fire department before putting the board up.
It's always putting Garth first, his needs and his wants, but above his needs and wants, safety.
The regional center assessment said that a Roseville police lieutenant contacted them after Jill filed a missing persons report when he was taken without her knowledge. The report said Garth directly told the lieutenant that he did not want to return to his mother's house, and that Garth told him about physical and sexual abuse by family members. We reached out to the Roseville Police Department. They said they have no records of the call and therefore could not confirm it. The regional center told the judge that just because reports of abuse are inconclusive, it does not mean the claims are unfounded. The center said Garth's mother and brother would not be appropriate conservators and recommended the Department of Developmental Services be appointed instead. They also said DDS should ask for one power the family didn't: control over who Garth can see. They also alternatively recommended the court look into a more restricting conservatorship that, if approved, would have sent Garth to a locked psychiatric facility.
It was quite disturbing to read.
The judge listened to the regional center. He gave temporary conservatorship of Garth to the Department of Developmental Services, not to the family as recommended by the court investigator. With the conservatorship appointed, DDS decided Garth should move out of his mother's house and into one of their care facilities, what they call a vendor.
We explained it to Garth. One of his brothers and I took him there. We set up his bedroom the way he wanted it set up.
That must have been, he's lived with you, what, 39 years
His entire life.
What was that like for you?
Each of these things are absolutely devastating, but I continue to try to say, collaborate, Get along with these people. Trust them. They're professionals. That was a huge lesson that this has taught me, not to do that.
Part of that lesson came from after they moved Garth into the facility.
We did not want him to see our tears as we drove away.
But the DDS care home struggled with Garth.
Because they couldn't help him sleep and he couldn't sleep, they called 911. We learned that this is what care homes do.
Court records show Garth has been hospitalized for 43 out of 88 days since being moved to care homes and under the care of DDS. That means between November 2021 and February 2022, he spent about half the time in emergency rooms rather than the care homes, an expensive price tag between the ambulance rides and long stays.
A third-party person said that Garth's care was probably about $1 million a month.
And because Garth is under a conservatorship of DDS, taxpayers are footing that bill. But another approach one care home used to calm Garth was asking for help from the same family Garth had just been taken away from.
Because she could not handle Garth. She would call me and she would call Ian, can we come and help her? And she actually wanted us to spend the night there.
Jill provided us with the text messages. "Please help me tonight. I don't want to call the hospital," one text from the caregiver reads. Other texts also show the care home facilitator asking Jill for advice on Garth's care, and that she, quote, didn't see any abuse at all and believed they are a good family. "I really don't know what they're doing," the caregiver said, referring to the regional center. In a separate text, she said, "I just wish he will be back to you. I just wish they have a human heart." He keeps writing, "I miss my mom." Garth no longer lives at this care home. It's Jill's understanding he's now moved residences 5 times in 6 months.
What the judge stated in the courtroom was not court ordered, that we are supposed to be given 10 days notice before he's moved. We're supposed to be told why he's being moved and where he's being moved to. They have not followed that at all.
Visitation, including phone calls between him and his family, have been severed, especially for Jill and Ian. Jill hasn't seen or spoken to Garth for about 12 weeks as of mid-July 2022, but a regional center employee mentioned he's now at a facility in Shingle Springs.
We have not been there. We are not allowed to go there. We have not seen him or heard from him.
It's not for a lack of trying. She's repeatedly asked Garth's regional center service coordinator for visitation. "We can't provide you a date when you will be able to call or visit Garth," the service coordinator wrote back, and said they're reviewing which contacts would be in his best interest to see.
And they have said that when you do come to visit him, after you leave, we have a real hard time with him. So they call us triggers, as if we cause that problem. When I believe what's triggering him are the memories of the home that he really had.
In text messages from the first caregiver, she addresses this, saying visitation makes Garth happy and it's not a trigger. But the regional center, acting on behalf of DDS's conservator, has told the family they can't visit or speak with Garth because that's allegedly what Garth wants.
We politely and kindly contacted both and said, can't we just talk to him? And they said, oh, he doesn't want to talk to you. He doesn't want to visit family.
In the email from his service coordinator, she says Garth has not expressed any interest in having contact with you at this time. Jill responded saying she will respect Garth's wishes if she can hear them directly from him.
And allow him to call one or more family members so that we can hear from his voice. I don't want to talk to my family. I don't want them in my life. I don't ever want them to visit me again. Because we will follow the instructions. They would not do that.
We wanted to make sure we did everything in our power to try to talk to Garth, to be able to hear and report exactly what he wants. So we reached out to his regional center service coordinator, who is working as his conservator and making decisions for him. And we requested an interview with Garth.
We also emailed her a number of times. Eventually, we got the same response from Alta Regional Center's legal manager that Jill receives, that Garth has expressed no interest in speaking with us. We responded asking if Garth was explained to directly that a reporter wanted to speak with him, and if we could ask him if he'd be willing to talk with us. We never received a response. So we tried a different approach to speak with Garth, with the help of his oldest brother, Russell. Since DDS got conservatorship, Russell has laid low in hopes of keeping contact with his brother, unlike other family members. At this point, he had not seen Garth for 6 months. He requested visitation and was approved. We filmed their visit from a distance, hoping to have a moment to talk to Garth. About halfway through the visit, we were able to approach Garth and talk to him directly.
Do you miss your family?
Yes. I don't. What can I do?
Do you wish you lived with your family, Garth?
Yes. I terribly miss my mom.
He went on to say he can't call his mom because he doesn't have a phone in the house. And then he recounted an unrelated story about janitors picking up trash, which Garth often does habitually because of his OCD. Russell and his wife finished our conversation together, getting Garth's attention back, asking one final question.
Listen, buddy, listen to my question. Where would you like to live?
Where do you want to live, Garth?
With my family.
Yeah, with who specifically?
Mom.
With mom? And when you say with me?
Garth has expressed his desire to live at home not only to us, he's also told law enforcement.
I'm on the rest of my mom.
And he's made it clear in drawings he's done while living at the care home. And then, directly to a judge. On July 27, 2022, the Department of Developmental Services' temporary conservatorship over Garth expired, and there was a court hearing to reassess it. Prior to the hearing, Judge Gaverser granted us written permission to film and upheld that during the hearing despite DDS's repeated objections.
We do object to the media being in these proceedings. These are confidential proceedings.
The judge assured her he was not going to discuss details like Garth's medical information or the name of the care home he was at.
As the conservator, we do not consent.
I'm not going to address any of his medical issues. I just want to know how long he's been where he is.
I understand, but I think just the entire proceedings are confidential, so we would object.
Conservatorship proceedings are confidential?
Because of the First Amendment, as well as the California Code of Civil Procedure, the right to witness a civil proceeding like Garth's is protected, and why we were permitted to be there. In the 40-minute hearing, Judge Gaverser discussed Garth's case, giving time for all to have a word, including Garth's court-appointed attorney, who discussed his first in-person visit with Garth.
I was not able to engage with Mr. Schutte for an ability to conduct an interview. He did not appear to be comprehensive.
The Schutte family's attorney and Jill herself also spoke.
Alta Regional Center has made that impossible for me to get any information.
The hearing ended with the judge ordering DDS and the Schuttes to meet and hopefully reach an agreement over Garth's current situation.
And I think that it might be very helpful to talk to see if you can come out with some sort of resolution.
For the meantime, he extended DDS's conservatorship over Garth until the next hearing in December. But before the hearing ended, Jill pointed out one last thing.
Garth has patiently been holding his hand up for almost 5 minutes, so hopefully we can address that.
Until this point, Garth has rarely had a voice in court.
You know this girl that tried to take my Woody and my Jesse.
Hey, Garth, what I want you to do is I want you to talk to Mr. Harpainer about your concerns, okay? And what you want to do.
I want to live with my mom.
I'm sorry, I can't.
I'm saying I want to live with my mom.
Okay. I want you to talk to the attorney that I've appointed to represent you and share that with him.
After the hearing ended, we tried to talk to DDS attorney Meredith Nixon.
Hi, Ms. Nixon. We have a couple of questions for you.
No comment.
You heard yourself that
Ma'am, I'm not speaking with you. This is a confidential communication.
Can we ask you some questions about DDS conserving people in general?
No.
Because we have an understanding that
DDS refused to give us a non-camera interview for 7 months. We wanted to know if there was some incentive for conserving people like Garth.
No comment.
you have nothing to say to the families or anything and conserving people. We would love to share
I'll
your
speak to
side.
the families directly, not through the media.
Okay. Well, you're not willing to speak with the families, so that's why we're got involved.
No comment.
Meanwhile, here's how the hearing ended at the Schutte home.
Can I review? just a joke. I don't know why I'm spending hundreds of thousands of dollars so that they can continue to abuse us.
Jill retired to spend more time with Garth. She's now gone back to work at an organization that helps people with autism, similar to Garth. Also, she can help pay for her legal fees.
Garth has been an incredible person in my life. He's taught me so much. I'll never forget one time he came to me and he wanted to talk about religion. And one of his questions was, is there a heaven? And if there is, will he be normal? I don't know, but I tried to tell him, of course.
Part of what you learn from having a relative with a disability is that that's normal. Everyone who has a disability, they're already normal. You're normal. I'm normal. Garth is normal. We're all, in spite of our flaws, we're all normal.
What they don't believe is normal is having their brother taken from them, based on allegations of abuse unproven by law enforcement and unproven by Adult Protective Services.
An agency has chosen to take a law enforcement perspective and demonize Garth's family, demonize even Garth himself.
There is no evidence. They will not find evidence of abuse of Garth.
They're concerned if this can happen to their family, it could happen to anyone.
360,000 people could potentially be subject to this system.
360,000 people is the number of folks who get services from DDS at our time of filming. That number is expected to increase to over 400,000 in 2023.
I want to help as many of those 360,000 people as I can, because even just happening to one person is awful.
If I knew anything like this, if I could have predicted this, we would have left the state of California.
Next on The Price of Care. Our investigation found the Schutte family isn't alone.
I knew something bad was going to happen if he wasn't out of that situation. Something bad was going to happen, and ultimately it did.
We would not wish this on anybody.
We found a system that is failing the very people it's promised to protect.
It's just not a way to live.
People with disabilities are not being heard, not being asked what they want.
I didn't want to be conserved.
And what's supporting this system is you and I, our taxpayer dollars at work. This is The Price of Care.